Hello, this is Peter Merrick, and I did an incredible interview last week with Dr. Charlene Coon. She is one of the top experts in cybersecurity. She has worked for several three-letter, maybe four-letter organizations. I'm going to let her share because it's not my place to, because she has clearance. She also knows where she has to stop. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation because we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, some of the interesting situations and the learning that Charlene has learned by being an expert in cybersecurity and how it relates to human intelligence, because cybersecurity could only take you so far. And I'm going to use an analogy. You can carpet bomb a country, but you will not take it over unless you send in ground troops. So we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, and we're also going to relate it to human intelligence. Charlene, thank you so much for being back. We have such a good time talking.
Absolutely. Always.
It'd be a shame that other people didn't join our conversations because I learned so much every time we speak.
But oh my gosh, yeah, no, if you can turn the clock back and just so many times you're having a conversation, especially you and I, we're having a conversation and we're like, oh my goodness, this is other people would be interested. I've heard other people talk about this. I've heard they're passionate about it. Absolutely. Glad to help.
Well, you're a very passionate person, and that's reflected in your career and the things that you're doing. So I want to just focus on, like, you became an expert in cybersecurity, and we've had conversations in the past of how you worked for the FBI and you got your clearance, because you were sharing in the past that it shouldn't just be between you and I, it should be with the audience as well. What type of rigor did they put you through to become a cybersecurity expert for the FBI?
Yes, it's kind of a cool conversation. So when I was just finishing up my master's degree in cybersecurity, and I was approached by the FBI. Hey, would I want to go work for them? I'm like, absolutely. Who would pass that up? And then from that, you go into a very long interview process. You're going to meet and you're going to talk about your whole life. And they're going to ask you probing questions, especially because the type of clearance I needed was not even average for an FBI agent. It was highly elevated. And you talk about your whole life. Then you go see a polygraph examiner. In fact, one time later, a few years later, I was at work with some gentlemen, and they just hired a new contractor, and the contractor had to go see this. We realized a few of us had seen the same polygraph gentleman. And the guys are like, oh, dude, if you cry, it's okay. He's going to make you cry. And I was like, oh, so it wasn't just me, not just being female. And they're like, no, he makes everyone cry. I'm like, okay, good. And the point of they're going deep. They want to find out about you. Really, who are you? Can they trust you? And so it is like a meet God type process that you're going to spill your guts about everything, that you remotely might have done wrong in life, or you did do wrong, and maybe tell some lessons that you might have learned doing those. And they really come at you, and you at least all of us, we did admit that we did cry through the process, but we made it.
Shock therapy, right? Like, was not only were they finding if you were trustworthy, you were also dealing with a lot of things that maybe you hadn't dealt with consciously.
Yep.
He's not a therapist you would recommend for the average and a lighter heart.
It actually is really good for you, because you really do have to evaluate your life, and you really have to question yourself. You know, okay, when I was young and I did stupid things, you know, have I matured? Have I grown since then? And, you know, and when you're put under pressure, what are you going to do? So those are all really, I actually, even though the process makes you cry, or at least makes a lot of people cry, I absolutely appreciate that they do that, so that we know that we can trust people,
Yes.
are willing to fight for us and go after the bad criminals.
Charlene, when you first joined the FBI, in a conversation we had in the past, you were saying that it was a relatively new department, the cybersecurity, because you were
Oh,
working with some of the original class of graduates who were dealing with cybersecurity. And that means, well, you know, before I go into that, the FBI focuses on coordinating and protecting Americans and residents and people inside America from criminal activities. So if you can just share with me the mandate that your department had, and the fact that you dealt with some dinosaurs. I mean, some people who were the first people in the FBI that deal with cybersecurity, because it was a relatively new thing when the internet became opened up. I guess I would say Bill Gates put an Explorer on Microsoft 95, and it really took off.
right, yeah. So the I absolutely, I got to work with some of the original cohort of FBI digital forensic examiners. Um, and that was really, really cool. They had lots of experience, but they had been trained in that original class, and they had kept up with some training, but our backgrounds were different. The background I had was in IT. At that point, I had gone from the vice president of the healthcare chain, jumped into IT, where I had to do tons of troubleshooting, and where you learn, where are the logs being saved, and what is this doing, and how is this communicating. That background that I pulled into being a digital forensic examiner ended up being a huge bonus for me, because I understood more about the systems and how they communicated, and was able to, you know, find logs, grab logs, piece things more together than even some of the most seasoned forensic examiners were able to do.
Is it sort of like a doctor? Like if someone graduated like 50 years ago, they don't know about the most modern things than someone who just graduated from medical school?
It, ooh, you know, I'm going to say it has more to do with personality. People that know me know I'm very determined.
Yeah.
I'm very detailed. I don't give up easily. And I absolutely like seeing good win. So, you know, and a lot of people, particularly these days, are like, FBI is bad, FBI is bad. I'm like, no, 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 no. Any organization has the good people and the bad people. And if anyone ever thought that FBI didn't have good and bad, why would you think criminals wouldn't try to infiltrate one of the most prominent organizations in the world? That would be a fallacy. I knew going into the FBI that I would have to be very aware that things are not always what they appear to be. And anyone now is like, oh, I don't, you know, why would I go work for them? I'm like, absolutely, please go work for them. Please be part
Why?
of the good.
And there's
Don't
more
let
good
bad
than there's
win.
bad?
Absolutely. The FBI agents and the support staff that I worked with, they are some of the most patriotic people on the planet. They give their lives, they give their souls, they not probably their souls, they give their lives and a piece of their emotional being to be able to fight crime. Everyone says, thank you to the veterans. Hey, thank you. Hey, thank you. There's so many people in society that do jobs that they can't get that thank you, because they can't tell people they work for the FBI, or they work for the CIA, or they work for whoever it is. And same thing with police officers, that have to work really bad crime scenes. And because when I worked, frequently we had police officers putting their lives on the line for us, particularly for me. I was Hawaii's first non-agent FBI digital forensic examiner. So everyone else had guns except for me. That's the only difference between my job and theirs, is they could carry a gun. I couldn't. So I had them and police officers constantly aware that I did not have a gun and to protect me.
In some cases, probably required you to be 24/7.
Absolutely, yes. So so even though I wasn't technically on the books for that time, is that we were all hands on deck if somebody needed something. And the FBI doesn't just do US now, they do international. And so like a country can invite us in to help them, because we have some of the biggest experts on the ground, and they frequently do that because we need boots on the ground. You need, they could call us, we could, try to talk them through it, but going to a location, actually going to a crime scene, or going to where the digital evidence is, it tells a different story. You can miss so much by not being present and not seeing something and how it fits in. So not about one of the FBI cases, but I'm going to give you a simple example because I don't want to, give too much over there. I was working with some data centers, and this was for the 2020 census. And our job, my job was like, you could call it interim national site security director would be a good title. Because they ended up, the guy they hired after me was the national site security director. I had to leave because of my, like I told you last time, I have a security clearance. If you don't use it for 2 years, you lose it. So I did that for 2 years. They hired him just as I was leaving, and he did a bang up job. But in this process, we were working with data centers and call centers and lining them up to do work for us. And we kept talking to this one company. Everybody was very like, yeah, they've got it. And we went on site, and they brought me in as the cybersecurity expert to be on that team to go tour the site. And it became very clear immediately that there were some issues, that if you hadn't been there, you couldn't see them. And if you didn't sit down and have very lengthy, long conversations with this team, that you wouldn't have discovered those. As we went in, I was invited in as the cybersecurity SME for the census project, and we went into this site that.
This is for all the U.S.
Yes. So this was the national effort. The call centers. We had the. It's called CQA. So it was the quality for the digital part of the census. So census is usually knock, knock, knock. And this time we're going, it's modern age. Let's have people try to go online, fill it out digitally online. And then we need the call center. So if they either don't have a computer, they could call us and we could help them. Or if they have questions or technical difficulties, they can call us and we can help them. And so this was that process. And we needed data centers to for these call centers, and went to this one site that man, what's the saying? If you're talking to somebody, it's what's that saying? The next best thing besides sliced bread. Just thought that this place, with talking to them, that they were just everything that we needed. We showed up. I came as, like I said, the cybersecurity expert to the site. And oh my goodness, the things we saw, boots on the ground, that human intelligence piece, that where, example, one of the areas was supposed to be a very secure area where we handled the more sensitive data. Census information is handled very, very sensitive. The FBI can't ask for it. Judges can't ask for it. As when it comes to a particular person, they can ask for general data about a community, but not specifics about a person. And so this data is very protected. And walking by this room, I'm like, there's a camera on the ceiling. Like, oh, it's always been there, it's, I'm like, no, you will have to remove that. Oh, we can just turn it off. I'm like, no, you're not just going to turn it off. And then as you pass this room, there is a glass window, a large glass window from the hallway looking into this room. And I'm like, you realize you're going to have to pay to have that tempered. Oh no, we'll just hang something. I'm like, no, because someone might move it out of the way. I'm like, people humans do stuff like that. So we need to make sure that we don't have an incident. And then we walked into this, what it would be a SOC, so a Security Operations Center. Security Operations Center is you walk into it and they're watching all the systems, is someone trying to hack something? What's happening? And we're in there and they're introducing it. They're very proud of what they're offering. And there's people in there working. We don't have any traffic going yet. And I'm asking them about the seating situations for this room. I'm like, there's people working, are they going to be done with their project when we come out? Oh, no, you can use that half of the room and they can use, I'm like, no, we can't. We can't share a room. They cannot see our screens. They cannot know if there's an incident. And we spent long conversations with that company and talking to them about, could they solve these solutions? Did they have resolutions? It was a definite moment of boots on the ground makes a big difference. We do simple things in cybersecurity, such as we do what's called floor sweeps or floor checks frequently. It's walking into an area because you need boots on the ground. Asking somebody, hey, how's your area doing, or getting paper reports is not always going to tell you the whole story. Such as if we're doing floor checks and we walk into a room, and we do this on a regular basis, if someone sees us, someone sees you, they know you're cyber, and they'll all of a sudden, like, infractions that they shouldn't have been doing all of a sudden disappear, or land up over in a garbage can where nobody can tell who had that item that shouldn't have been in the room, or different things, because sometimes you can't have paper to write on, you can't have pencils, you're not supposed to be writing notes, or notes, or if you're writing them, are supposed to be erased X amount of time, so at the end of the day, you're wiping everything, type of things like that. And we'd walk in and, oh my gosh, we'd find infraction after infraction. I'm like, oh, they know who we are, and they've kind of got our timing down. So I had to tell my staff, I'm like, we need to enter that room, or those rooms at the different sites. We need to enter them frequently, not just when we're doing floor checks. We need to enter them. We need to build relationships with the people in the room. I said, those relationships are going to do more for us than, oh, we showed up to do a check. We need the people on the floor to trust us. We need them to know that why we're doing what we're doing. We need to have conversations with them about why we do this type of stuff. Why are we paying pains in the rear? Because in cybersecurity, everything you do affects somebody somewhere. It's going to affect someone's life. It's going to affect someone's business, whether or not they stay in business. It's going to affect the security of the country. It's like, you have to go through this. Who is this affecting and why
Well, the
is
job that you were doing was also impacting people's districts, whether they're going to be like changed, right? From the demographics, how many
Yep.
people actually live there.
Right?
I
That,
read recently, I read something recently just about census, which is not the United States. China had lied about their census. They had 100 million less people.
oh my
And
goodness.
what that translates to, that their population will be half by 2050. Now, those 100 million people that are missing, they're childbearing. These are people who would have been born after the one child rule. And out of that 100 million people that they overcalculated, that they told the world about, 80 million of them were women.
Isn't that interesting?
It goes even further, Charlene, because just to give perspective how important the census is, and the fact that it's secured and it's also transparent, what that meant is it wasn't believed that China had hit its top of its population until about 2019. But with that finding or that disclosure, they hit their top in 2003. We're talking, it's the oldest population on the planet, and they've already gone through their what you would call a demographic dividend, meaning the people who were born in the 50s to, let's say, the late 70s, they had already gone through the python of the workforce, and they also went from the farm into the city. So now, in the last, let's say, 15 years, salaries have gone up 12 times. It's cheaper to manufacture in the United States now. However, there's such a sunk cost, maybe several $trillion in their manufacturing, but they just don't have the population to continue to be the manufacturing.
Oh,
So it's just, I just bring that up just to give context of why the census is so important. And one of the things that I think which the United States had until recently, the United States and Israel were the only developed countries that were maintaining their, I'm trying to remember what it's called, like how many children per woman. You need to have at least
oh yes.
2.1 children. And the United States is the only country, large country in the world that continue doing that. And
We
Israel
did
is,
till I think the last couple years.
yes,
That
until
hit with
the thing that we're not allowed to talk about, because I truly believe that there's enough experts out there who should have, would have known that if you prevented people from socializing with each other, and they
yeah,
wouldn't have family formation. And
right.
that's an issue.
That's a whole
No,
nother conversation. Yep.
yeah, I know I went on a sidetrack, and this is
Oh
what
no,
we do.
that's fine. One, right? One of the things about that counting the census,
Yes.
um, that so ties into a court case that I've been asked to address right now. You're talking about how they manipulated their numbers. And cybersecurity has a lot to do with that. I'm sure those were not, hand manipulations, someone putting in a document. That was a digital manipulation. In order to do that many, someone digitally manipulated something. And we have had investigation after investigation in the US on not the census. And we very much need to be aware now with what has happened during the elections, as what we saw happening there are the census numbers being manipulated. And they thought I was being, different people from the data center we visited thought I was being too hard, and that it was okay that they weren't really secure. And and exactly what you said, those numbers count. there's reason why we don't want those numbers manipulated.
They do. It's like what programs are going to be introduced, which ones are going to have the budgets cut,
Yep.
which districts in Congress and also statewide are going to be changed because the demographics are changing. It's important because it's the basis. Because I remember reading, and maybe I'm wrong, I'm now going back, I think the first US Census really happened in like where they just wanted to calculate how many people they had in America,
Mhm.
and it's important. It's
Yep.
important to know who you're
Right,
servicing. And
where they
again,
are,
and
what's
that's
happening.
one thing I also want to point out, because many of us don't think about this. The government's supposed to serve we the people,
Mhm.
and they have to know who we the people are to a certain extent. Where you were saying the privacy comes in.
Right.
I have a
That-
question to ask Charlene. What is the most interesting cases that you dealt with in cybersecurity?
Okay. One of them, um, so when you are going through digital evidence or any type of evidence, when you're going through it, and you have, when you do it for the FBI, you have a judge's warrant that gives you permission to investigate and to look at certain items or enter certain areas. And when you're given that, your activities have to stay focused on that crime. If you see other crimes or notice other crimes as you are, whether you're on scene or going through digital evidence, you can say, hey, I think I see something here, and ask for another warrant. But unless you get that other warrant, you have to, this one case when you ask about, because I was focusing on one case, and as I'm going through it, I had to ask for another warrant. As I'm going through it, I had to ask for another one. And things just started connecting up that if you hadn't paid close attention, it requires very close attention, and it requires you being able to connect dots and like notice things that are out of place.
Yes.
Like this one case I worked, oh, it was heart-wrenching. The Let's say if and this is not a dish on the any religious community at all. But one day I had to say, can we just go? I would love to see a month where we could go where the bad guy hadn't infiltrated some positive organization, that had not purposely gone in and targeted a community because of their good. And frequently as not just an outsider, frequently as a very prominent person in an organization that is supposed to be doing good. And this one case, as I started looking through the different events, the different air flights, the different pieces that this good person had been involved in, and I started lining them up with criminal dates, criminal activities, criminal occurrences. They paired up, the trips paired up, the meetings paired up, the locations paired up, and it was just like, oh my goodness. And this person was a prominent, trusted person in their community. And it's like you just want to say, be alert, be aware, make sure that the people you are that you trust really are trustworthy. So, unfortunately, in the neighborhood I lived in, I didn't work this case. This was I had moved, but I heard about it in a neighborhood I lived in. A neighbor that lived across the street from me, that I know, that the neighbor's like, oh my gosh, he's just all that, and blah blah blah, and he's doing this and he's doing this and he's doing this for the neighborhood and for the community, and would be called one of the stalwart members of the community. Well, it came known by the FBI that he'd actually been running a Ponzi scam, a very large Ponzi scam, and that's where his money came from, and had conned many, many people into participating in his Ponzi scam. Supposedly stalwart member of this community, and
the question I have, and this is a question I asked, I spoke with Patrick Moore, and he was the co-founder of Greenpeace. And in 1986, he did not like the direction that was moving from stewardship to saying human beings were the virus. And the reason I was interviewing him, it was a curiosity, because there's a lot of nefarious people out there, and there's a lot of things happening that I shake my head, this could be the end of days. Like, before it's like it was like a fiction document. Now I'm thinking, no, maybe it's real, because some of the things are being acted upon. And I asked Patrick, I said, Patrick, how did you survive? And the second question, I said, how do you know? Because you had these people who were your allies, and when you started speaking obvious truths, I might get taken off. One obvious truth is greenhouses, they pump in anywhere from 800 parts per million to 1,200 parts per million, and the vegetables grow faster. And it's a known fact that for most of our history, there were about 10 to 20 times more carbon, and the trees and all the animals were bigger. It didn't end the world. And the reason I asked him is, I said, so how do you know, whether someone who approaches you is authentic or someone who wants to sabotage you?
absolutely.
And he said something very revealing, and that moves us to the next topic. He says, I've learned to know. I've learned to know. I've learned to trust this. I've seen enough out there to see the patterns, but ultimately this. And he says, I know the questions that they ask, and I know where they're going, and that was why I wanted to ask him that, because I know what he said is true. We can do lie detectors, we can do all sorts of things, but we've got superhuman powers, and unfortunately we've relied too much on technology
Absolutely.
to let it go down. And the one thing that he shared with me, and this goes to the human intelligence, because I see so many similarities, even though you're in a different profession than he is.
Absolutely.
He says the problem with modern society is everything that everyone knows is something they don't witness, or it's too small for them to observe.
Oh my
And
goodness.
you cannot really have true intelligence and security without having human beings, and human beings are your best intelligence. And before we go back to your, we're going to be telling more stories about cases you dealt with, but recently you were approached by someone to do cybersecurity in the nation of Mozambique. You did all your research. You probably went to a travel store and got yourself where to go, where to eat.
Yep.
You talked to tons of people.
Yep.
You maybe even found an obscure Mozambique restaurant. That could never prepare you for actually putting your tukis on a plane and landing in Mozambique and walking and talking and experience how different it was, and also how wonderful it was.
Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about that. Absolutely. Absolutely. is that as people, we as people, we are exposed to things from other countries, usually from, news. News. What does news tell you? Usually the bad about a country, usually the bad about a people. It doesn't have to be a country, a people, a society, a whatever. The news tends to tell us the bad about them. And as flights from where I live to Mozambique are usually about 31, 33 hours, the whole travel time. And as I started doing traveling, that boots on the ground, that seeing the difference. As I went through the Middle East to, oh my gosh, totally different than what I thought it was. The areas I went through, kind, courteous, all we ever see are the people in their military uniforms and people being rude to women. That's what we see on the news. That is not what I saw. I saw families laughing, joking, husbands being the kindest, the courteous, the me being a slightly older woman. I'm lifting. I never once got to like lift my suitcase, carry my suitcase. Constantly, men were, may I please help you? Please let me do that for you. Constantly.
How interesting that is, because right now men are too frightened to be men.
Oh, not there. No, absolutely.
Like just basic courtesy, like younger kids who go on a date. Well, I can't open up the door for her. She's gonna think that I'm sexist.
Right. It was so nice to have the men actually acknowledge that maybe I wasn't as strong as them, to acknowledge maybe I am a little bit older, to just want to treat me nice and not be afraid to treat me nicely. And it wasn't, they weren't hitting on me. If anyone's thinking that, they were not hitting on me. It was genuine, being nice, being polite, being courteous, being helpful. And then when I continued on traveling into Mozambique, I can't say I didn't initially have some strong apprehensions, but I'm like, okay, I'm like, because all people see it, they kept saying, are you sure you want to go there? It's not safe. They're having a war. Well, I Googled a little bit, and I'm like, they're having the war all the way up north, and I'm going all the way down south. So I think I'm going to be okay. And different things like, well, there's a lot of thievery there. And, I'm like, well, okay, I'll just, not bring anything expensive, or keep it in, a backpack or something, and that isn't what I experienced at all. Is that little piece called Cabo Delgado that's having its little skirmishes and stuff.
This is Mozambique. This is like a little
It's all the way
territory
up at
living.
the top. It does not affect the rest of the country. It's up in that little tiny corner. But that's all the news wants to tell us. The rest of the country, oh my goodness, it was like going back to the 1970s. The 70s, I remember, the neighborhoods people were polite, they were kind, they're courteous, they are social with each other, they spend the day talking to each other, they're not connected to their phones and their TVs, and because data there is very expensive. So if you do have like a smartphone, if you want to know where all of our like push button phones and broken screen phones and stuff went, yeah, a lot of them are over there. So a lot of them have the push button phones. So they're just using it when they need to make a phone call, not really searching. If they have a smartphone, the data is very expensive for them. So they're using it for very limited amounts of time. You know, you can purchase your data in like a pack for like 2 hours or a pack for 1 day, or and you get little reminders on your phone that says, would you like 2 hours, or do you want a 1 day pack, or, and that's how you purchase it. And so they still interact a lot as human beings. What I learned from that is the whole world has not gone crazy, just pieces of it. And there are very kind and pleasant and people still on the planet. They are, they're not doing all that old drama stuff. They're not doing it. They have to work. They have to work. They have to earn a living. They don't got time for the drama. They're not
Yeah.
doing they're very.
They also appreciate, they probably have good extended families, and unfortunately, we
Absolutely.
don't have that here. And actually seeing that.
Mhm.
Now, Charlene, how did you find your way to Mozambique? You were
Uh,
working with the Pentagon, right? You were doing some work, or you had worked with someone who was in the
okay.
Pentagon.
So I got invited to Mozambique. So it's from two gentlemen. Two gentlemen used to brief the Pentagon on different activities. So they would go there and brief. One of the gentlemen is my friend. The other gentleman, he has since moved to Mozambique and he helps the government there. And so the government said, hey, we've been hacked by terrorists. You know, we really need to look at our cybersecurity. And so they asked that gentleman, hey, reach out to your friend, who would you recommend? And so they reached out to him and he said, yeah, I know who you want. You want Dr. Coon, because Dr. Coon is not just really good at cybersecurity, but she has that humanitarian streak in her, that and that huge sense of you know, I'm not just doing cybersecurity to do cybersecurity because it pays well. I'm doing cybersecurity because it protects lives and humans and businesses and keeps them profitable. That those are so. Talking there, we started talking about cybersecurity, conversations with them. Our conversations were not just about the cybersecurity. As we started having conversations, I was like, I don't want to just come in and, you know, spend the country's money and leave them in debt. Yes, I can come in. Yes, we can come in as a company and fix stuff and then leave. But let's do it in a way that is boots on the ground there. Helped me learn that they had other needs, and that with connections that we have in this world, that we have the ability to look at a country, look at its citizens as human beings and say, oh my goodness, I actually can, you know, at least attempt to help with some of this. Um, it's I could go in, keep my eyes blind and go, okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna make some bucks, you know, woohoo, yay, money, did cybersecurity and then leave. No,
We
what
all
I,
leave, but we
right?
all leave, and that's the one thing I've realized, especially as I get older. We all leave this body. So how did we live in this body? And who did we touch in this body?
So
And it became, yes.
while I was over there, Queen Elizabeth died. And I don't know how much of that got, you know, around the world about the feelings of people from Africa about colonization and oh my gosh, there's so many stories that while I was there. I'm going to tell one. I'm going to tell,
Yes.
this will set kind of the groundwork. Um, I was invited to a restaurant, and it's an outdoor restaurant. We're sitting at this restaurant. We're supposed to, me and my business partner, we're supposed to meet another gentleman, and we're sitting in here. My business partner, he's Mozambican, And as we're sitting having lunch, he is doing this business meeting. He's quietly telling me about all the other people in the room, or not, sorry, not room, it's an outdoor, all the other people in the restaurant area. And he's, you know, saying, hey, that's so-and-so. And he's pointing them all out. They were all NGOs. NGO is a nonprofit organization. And he's telling me about all of them and what they do. And then he's trying to explain to me how you do business in Mozambique, that you're usually not doing business in an office. You're usually doing it in a restaurant, just like we were. And you go to particular restaurants because you want to meet particular people. And you go through a long series of, you know, hi, kind of see you. Hi, no, I dropped something. You know, oh, hi, you have a nice hat. Oh, hey, we should go out to lunch. Or, hey, next time, like, we go out to lunch, let's talk a couple minutes about business. You know, that whole process. And he looked at me and he goes, Charlene, are you sick? And I say, no, I'm not sick, but something's bothering me. I'm like, you're telling me everyone in this room pretty much is here to do business and that they're NGOs, nonprofit organizations. I said, how come I only see 2 Mozambican people sitting at these tables? Shouldn't we be doing business if we're here to help Mozambique? You're an NGO, you're here to help. Shouldn't we be doing business with Mozambicans? Shouldn't they be part of our team? Shouldn't they be part of our management team? But you're telling me in this whole restaurant, I see 2 Mozambicans. I see you and I see the gentleman over there. The rest of the Mozambicans were serving us.
And this is really the issue, isn't it? That we're
Right.
so disconnected from much of what happens in the world.
Yep.
And that's why actually getting feet on the ground. So you were there for 2.5 months.
I did.
You have this
And
huge plan that you plan to implement. Share with me about this, like how it grew from you going in and just stopping like terrorists and cyber hackers from getting into the government to you want to leave a mark, and you see your ability to leave a mark in this particular spot on this planet with this group of people because they're very malleable, meaning that everything's new. It can be done right.
They need to know that they can trust companies. I mean, there are so many cybersecurity companies that, not just companies, but people in cybersecurity that are going to sell you something, but they're not going to tell you all the holes in it. They're not going to necessarily point out to you what it doesn't do. You know, they told you that it does this, but
They don't tell them
cybersecurity
what they
requires
need.
the seller, the provider, to help educate whoever they're selling some more. If you don't jump into that education piece of like, I'm solving this, but I need you to be aware that it's not going to fix these other items, it's a huge, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like if I said, oh, hey, here's a nice beach house. And I'm using this as an example because they had some issues there with some of the section of the beach that needed, I'm going to sell you this beach house. You know, it's gorgeous. Oh, gorgeous, isolated area. You're going to love it. And by the way, some really prominent people, you know, they're going to be your neighbors. But I'm not going to tell you that, you know, I'm going to tell you about the architect. I'm going to tell you about the, you know, the quality of the community, everything. But I know that that shoreline is shifting. And I know that in a couple months, you're going to see that you're going to have some serious like water coming up to your foundation. I'm going to sell you that beautiful beach house. And if I don't tell you about that shifting coastline. I sold the house. I made a pretty penny, but was I ethical? Was I ethical when I did that?
And that's what it all comes down to.
Mhm.
Secure, like you can only do so much research with technology, but nothing's going to
Yeah.
take
Boots,
away the human element.
yeah, boots on the ground, the human side of this really taught me that Mozambique's ready. Africa's ready to be trusted. They have, oh my gosh, such their work ethics compared to ours. The areas I come from, you know, they just might skunk us a little bit. Their courtesy, their kindness, their non-drama, they're not taking their phone, you know, they're not sitting there like this on their phone, you know, like, why do I have to put my phone away? You know, it's my right to use this phone while I'm sitting here working and you're paying me. You know, you're infringing on my right to play with my phone. They're not doing that. They're not. I can't tell you that at the level of organizations, projects that we've worked on where people are coming in dressed very casually. They're flipping their hoodies up over their heads. They're scrunched down in their seats and they've got their phone like this. And you're like, how did we get here? How did we get to this level of non-professional? I don't know. The one thing, boots on the ground, that is the children there, the children working, because they're gonna starve if they don't work, and realizing that these call centers and data centers that we wanted to bring in, as I'm working with different members in the community that are illiterate, and I'm using Google Translate to, you know, first I thought, man, Google just is not getting it right because they're confused. I'm like, man, the Portuguese and Mozambican Portuguese must just be way different. Until I had been there a couple weeks, it took me to realize that they couldn't read what what I typed into Google. I'd type it in and it'd change it to Portuguese. I just expected they could read it. I didn't realize they couldn't read it, or they could barely read. And then so I just one day like, oops, push the little button so it could read it to them. That little symbol that says read, and the expression that came over the different people I was working with and their faces and their gratitude that we could now communicate. I'll take that and put that in data centers. I know that if I can hire illiterate people and put them in a data center using modern technology that automatically translates language to language live, and use search tools. You know, we pick up our phones, hey Google, hey Siri, and we ask them to give us, you know, Siri or Google to give questions. I mean, we can use that same type of technology to say, hey, I need an article on blah, 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 that this client just, you know, customer just asked for, and still help that customer. I can't solve all customer service problems by using that, but I can for basic customer service. And by doing that, I employ those people, I change their lives, I change their children's lives. That next generation, those parents will be able to afford to send those kids to school. In fact, I really want to offer to employees at our data centers and call centers, offer them the opportunity to receive education themselves. I want to offer them daycare services, schools. You know, one of the things Mozambique struggles with is their school system. They have not even close to the number of buildings they have. Children that are lucky enough to go to school in shifts, 4-hour shifts, like 6 to 10, 10 to 2, 6 to 8, no, 6 to 10. My math may be off. 4-hour shifts, you do the math. You do the math. Can't talk and calculate at the same time, but they go in shifts. Some schools have, and in those classrooms, it's not a kindergarten classroom. It's not a first grade classroom. It's not a third grade classroom. It's not a sixth grade classroom. In those classrooms are multiple grades. So you have one teacher trying to teach students at all different grade levels or multiple different grade levels, but only able to give them 4 hours worth of time. So even if you can go to school, there's not enough buildings, there's not enough time, there's not enough teachers. So in my data and call centers, why not put in some classroom space? It's not going to cost me a lot of money. It's going to benefit the parents. It's going to benefit society. And
Charlene, when's your next trip back?
so this is funny. So my next trip back is supposed to be the beginning of November. Is it going to happen in November? Not likely, or maybe the end of it, because, even us as the US, some of our websites are not as articulate or precise as they should be, or web pages, I should say.
Charlene, you've been fantastic, and we're going to continue these conversations. I want to thank you on such short notice, sharing some of your insight. I just want to have one last question because you're a cybersecurity expert, and I think it's a valuable tidbit. On our previous talk, you were sharing that in cybersecurity, you can find anything on anybody, even on the first time they load up their computer.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any safeguards that people could put in place, like what they should do? Like, should they put tape over their phone camera? Should they? They just want what tidbits? Like, not like nothing nefarious, but you just want to have your privacy. You know, it's like I know that sometimes I've talked, and then on my phone it tells me there happens like I said I want a sandwich, and a sandwich shop comes up on my phone.
Right. This is all individual to a person. At what level are you comfortable with your life being available to whoever? The first thing I tell people, don't do anything that you don't want other people knowing about. Stop it. You know, if you keep your life pretty clean, you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. Stop it. You know, and then you but that still doesn't solve like your bank account information and other information that people just shouldn't have access to or shouldn't know about. That only takes a part of, that any criminal aspect of it. Safeguards for your devices. Oh my goodness. We were just talking the other day about Google, Siri, and other devices that do similar services, how in your homes now, you can be sitting in one room and you can tell Siri or Google, hey, could you check on that other room? I just want to hear what's going on in there. And if it's just your family there, that might be okay. What if your neighbor gets easy access to your system? Or what if you have guests in your house for the day that maybe you don't want them hearing all the conversations? I do put, I think putting strips over your cameras all the time. It's a simple little, do put strips over your cameras. Check your phone out, take off apps that you don't need, and turn off functions that you don't need. Turn off, make sure, like I go to my my Google, any browser profile and check it. It says what's logged into your account. And, there's 8 systems logged into my account. Why? One of them's from California. What? You can check stuff out like that. Maybe don't sync as much stuff as you're syncing right now. It's
right.
And then when you're getting rid of your devices, your digital devices. Find out how to DoD wipe them. DoD wipe means you've wiped that thing, 7 times. So
The
that
factory setting?
no, not factory setting. Nope.
Okay.
Factory setting only means that you have destroyed the path to the data.
Right.
It means the data's still there. It means you only destroyed the path to it. And so factory settings or reinstalling an operating system on your
We can do Hillary Clinton's, the hammer.
right? Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to donate a laptop or a phone or something, I haven't gone into the phone recent model ones to see if we can just pull off the, can you pull the data out, little, it wouldn't be any
Because most people don't give the foresight of what they do. Therefore, they leave a lot of holes that sometimes nefarious people can get access to information that they would not want them to have access to in this day and age. You've been fantastic, Charlene. Like, I look forward to having more conversations with you, and thank you so much for your insight. This was fun.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And I find this all the time. I sit down with business owners all the time, and they always give me unsolicited advice because they want to share their knowledge, and it's really important.
Here with me is Peter Merrick,
president of merrickwealth.com.
Peter is an income and capital enhancement consultant,
speaker and author.
He is also
a recognized expert in the world of succession planning.
There's over 800 published articles and 3 industry textbooks.
He's a Canadian who joins us today from San Diego, California. Thanks for joining us.
So, Peter Merrick, tell us about you.
Well, I've been in the financial service industry since the end of 1991.
I graduated during the recession. The baby boomers were in their positions, so there was no jobs. So the 2 businesses that opened up were the technology field and the financial field. It was the Wild West in both of them. So I had this brilliant idea, and I had a friend of mine, and we started talking, and I said, hey, how difficult would it be for us to get a mutual fund dealer license? Not difficult enough. Thank God for those 10 years, the market just went up. I would sit down and I would take somebody's entire life savings that they spent 15, 20 years accumulating it, this young kid who knew nothing about nothing, and I would go and just invest it, and luckily it went up because the markets were crazy in the 90s. It was a boom time.
But in 2004, my life blew up.
I almost went bankrupt, but I was very fortunate because there were very few CFPs at the time, but every university in Canada wanted to offer the CFP program. So I got recruited as a prof. And it was great. I was reading all the textbooks. I would call all the big publishers. And what I came to the conclusion was the succession planning was missing.
One of the issues is there was very little talking beyond the accumulation stage. Like, how do you have a healthy life after you've done that?
I also looked at demographics. At the turn of the 20th century, the average life expectancy in the West and North America was 43 years old. And people are dying at 83. No one ever lived to 83.
Well, so I always say that there's 2 financial plans. There's the financial one that we work on, and there's what you get to do with all your time and that energy once you're done. And with this thing that they've been racing towards, they've hit it. But if they haven't thought about what they're going to do after or how they're going to feel validation for their existence, they just never stop. They just keep going.
Well, it's not anybody's fault because when people are young, they focus too much on doing. And later on in life, they have to focus on being.
So I wrote my own textbooks because
I thought it was very important to talk about how do you transition from the first half of life, which Carl Jung called it the morning, where you're accumulating, whether it's your ego, designations, education, houses.
The second half is deconstruction, giving wisdom away, giving away my money, giving away my time, leaving a legacy.
So talk to me about that stage. What's the purposeful way or kind of the best practices, ways, or considerations for people to take when transitioning into that stage of life?
Well, one, decide whether or not you want an exit. I find between the ages of 55 and 70, a lot of people feel that I'm just tired doing the same thing that I've always done, and I have the money now. So maybe I should get out when the going is good and pass on my business to someone who's got the energy to navigate it. Number two, who are you going to sell your business to? There's one issue about selling it to a family member or an employee. What happens after you sell it? Things don't go right. A lot of business owners want to sell their business because they just want to wash their hands. But by selling it to someone you know, you're not getting out of your business. The best is to sell to a third-party purchaser. The last one is after they make that transition from being a business owner, building a nest egg for themselves to have choice, they don't know what they're going to do. I've spoken to people who say, I'm going to take up golf. So my question is, do you golf now? I don't golf now. So what makes you think you're going to golf later? I just want to share with you guys a story.
There was a gentleman, his name was Bob Hunter. He was quite a celebrity. He started Greenpeace during the height of my blow up. When I was going through business loss, he was bringing me on national television. And you know what he was doing? He was saying, so Peter, don't you do that? And then he would give my phone number and he would give my web address. The reason why it went by merrickwealth.com, because it was almost like a phone number that would run across the television and I could actually see myself making money off of it. And he was dying. He had prostate cancer. And he turned to me and said, Peter, one day you will be in a position that you'll help someone else. And let me share with you about the legacy. Bob's been dead for 16 years. And I'm sharing you the legacy of Bob Hunter because he made a difference for me. And if I make a difference in anyone else's life, I'm a product of those people who are willing to do things and they had no expectations. And a true mentor is someone who has no expectations that they're going to see the tree blossom.
The reason I wrote The King of Main Street is younger people don't know how to find the right mentors, and older people have this need to mentor. It's almost like a biological need because they can see beyond their physical existence. They know that the sun was here before them and it will be after them, and what's going to be left behind that they leave.
I would joke, I can't make you money, but I can definitely save you money. What I mean by that is I am a Sherpa. That's someone who would guide someone to help them come down. But I realize the most precious asset they have is not their money. It's their time.
What last piece of advice would you like to give our listeners?
If you have a business, the most important thing to ask yourself is, why did you get into the business? And it's usually not to create a legacy, it's to create the lifestyle that you want. And at that point, ask yourself, what do you want to do during your last days?
The last human freedom is to choose one's own beliefs, one's own way. Everything else you can have taken away from you. But what you believe and how you choose to act in the world, that is yours.
And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And that is going to give you fulfillment emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. You guys have been wonderful, and I want to thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.